A lot of confusing stuff happens in The Witcher, especially in the first season, but we've laid everything out in a nice straight line so you can hop back in. No rewatch required. Sorry, but there's no way around it. If you want a legit timeline, we have to talk about Blood Origin. We know, this show sucked, but lore is lore, right? We're just gonna hit on the main points and then we'll get out of here.
This is really gonna piss Geralt off.
Blood Origin delves into the stuff that takes place about 1,200 years before the events of the main show, back when only elves and dwarves roamed the continent. Under the leadership of a hero named Solrith, the elves war with the dwarves and drive them east. After this, the Elven Golden Age begins. Their society flourishes for a time, but after Solrith dies, their civilization splinters into 3 kingdoms, and they go on to war with each other for 1,000 years. Things come to a head when a sage named Balor stages a massive coup with the help of a monster he's managed to summon from another world. He installs Merwin, a Zentrian princess, as the puppet empress of his Golden Empire, a new, improved, unified kingdom. But nothing about it is golden. The troops are awful, they use slave labor to raise ancient dwarven monoliths throughout the realm, and famine ensues. Turns out the monoliths are what allow Balor to summon monsters from other worlds, and he has plans to conquer those worlds as well. 7 warriors ultimately rise to put a stop to the madness. Using elixirs, herbs, magic, and the corpse of one of the monsters, they make a special concoction that gives one of them enough power to fight the one Balor summoned for his coup, which is how the very first Witcher comes to be. The proto-Witcher manages to defeat the monster, but the master monolith ends up getting destroyed as well. This causes the event known as the Conjunction of the Spheres, which is essentially a collision of worlds that results in humans and monsters becoming permanent residents of the continent. Okay, now we can skip forward a bit to when Geralt is born. Finally, more than 300 years after the laws of magic were drawn up and nearly 200 years after the first Witchers were created, he's here. He lives a normal life with his mother for a while, but she ends up abandoning him. Terrible.
Ma!
This ultimately results in him being transformed into a Witcher at an early age. Awesome. It's around this time that Witchers get themselves into a bit of trouble with humanity, and their stronghold, Kaer Morhen, is sacked. From this point on, Witchers are looked upon with disdain across the continent, or suspicion at the very least. A number of years later, humans turn their hateful eyes on the elves and decide to basically eradicate them. This event is called the Great Cleansing. Countless elves are driven out of their homes and killed. Bad blood between the 2 races is set in stone. Not long after the Great Cleansing begins, the quarter-elf hunchback Yennefer is born. She spends the first part of her life toiling alongside a family that cares nothing for her until a sorceress named Tissaia shows up to buy her and bring her back to Aretuza to learn the ways of magic. While she doesn't take to the whole sorceress life right off the bat, she eventually learns that she has the potential to become quite powerful. She also experiences love for the first time in her life with a fellow student named Istred. Upon graduation, she's offered the choice to transform into the best possible version of herself before heading off to work as a sorceress at the kingdom of her choosing. She doesn't go for this at first, since she's in love with Istred. But he sort of betrays her a little by revealing her quarter-elf heritage to his teacher, Stregobor, and she ends up getting assigned to Nilfgaard instead of Aedirn, her first choice. Subsequently, she and Istred break up. That's not enough to completely douse Yennefer's ambitions, though. She opts to undergo the transformation after all. The catch is that it comes at a price. She won't be able to bear children. But whatever, she's beautiful now, and is able to easily win over the King of Aedirn and snag herself a position there after all. As a result, her classmate Fringilla gets stuck with the Nilfgaard post. From here, we can skip forward about 20 or so years. This is when Calanthe inherits the Cintrian throne at the age of 14 and resoundingly defeats the Nazair military. As a result, she's dubbed the Lioness of Cintra. Around this same time, Geralt finds himself in the town of Blaviken. Here, he meets a young woman named Renfri, one of the only people in town who doesn't treat him like garbage.
More and more, I find monsters wherever I go.
But instead of getting to know her, he goes off to meet a wizard named Stregobor who wants to pay him to kill a woman he believes is evil because she was born during an eclipse. Killing humans isn't his bag, so Geralt refuses. Soon after, he comes to find out that Renfri is the woman in question, and that she was a princess before Stregobor captured her, along with a bunch of other girls who were born during the eclipse, and kept her in a tower. She escaped and has been living her life on the run ever since. Now she plans to take her revenge and kill Stregobor. She wants Geralt to help, but he doesn't want to get involved. Well, at least not in that sort of way. Back in town, he ends up killing her and her group of bandits and essentially saves the entire town. Are they grateful? Nope. Instead, he's dubbed the Butcher of Blaviken. A few years after this, Queen Calanthe marries Roner, a duke from Ebbing. Not long into his tenure as king, he's saved in the woods by the Urcheon of Erlenwald, a cursed hedgehog man, who is also known as Dooney. In return for saving the king's life, Dooney chooses the Law of Surprise as his reward, which essentially means that the man who is saved offers something to his savior whose nature is unknown to both of them. In this case, it ends up being Roner's future daughter, Pavetta, who, unbeknownst to him at the moment, is in utero. It's also at this point that Nilfgaard forces take Ebbing and start a war that will rage on for years to come. The following year, Geralt comes to meet Jaskier, a traveling bard. In their first of many forays together, they set out to find a demon that Geralt has been hired to kill. Turns out, it's just a goat man. They're soon after captured by elves, but Geralt is able to reason with them, since he, like them, has long been subjected to human prejudice. After they're let go, Jaskier writes a badass song that embellishes things a bit and ends up boosting Geralt's reputation among humans. All the while, Yennefer is years into her tenure as a sorceress for the kingdom of Aedirn. When Queen Callis and her baby are attacked by an assassin, she tries to save them, but fails. This causes her to lose her zeal for royal work and goes into business for herself instead. A few years later, Geralt arrives in Temeria, meets a sorceress named Triss Marigold, and helps lift a long-standing curse that was put on the king's daughter. Around 6 years after that, Geralt and Jaskier pay a visit to Sintra. It's here that Geralt saves Dooney from being slaughtered after the Hedgehog Man interrupts Pavetta's arranged wedding and reveals to everyone that the two of them are in love. After Calanthe reluctantly marries them and the curse is lifted, Geralt chooses the Law of Surprise as his reward. This ends up being Ciri, Pavetta's unborn child. Not really into the idea of a child of destiny, Geralt bails. Skip forward another 6 years and we see Geralt and Jaskier stumble into a bit of trouble with a Djinn. This is when Geralt meets Yennefer, who he seeks out to help with the Djinn problem. They both fight for the Djinn's wishes at first, but eventually hook up and become tied together forever since Geralt uses the last wish to make it so. They go on to see each other off and on for a number of years and end up rekindling their romance after participating in a dragon hunt. But once she finds out about Geralt using his last wish to link their fates, she believes her feelings to be bogus and leaves him. In anger, Geralt blames Jaskier for this and parts ways with him.
If life could give me one blessing, it would be to take you off my hands.
About a year later, Geralt returns to Sintra to see what's up with Ciri, his child of destiny. Instead of allowing him to see her, Calanthe locks him up in the dungeon. All the while, Nilfgaard sacks the city after defeating Cintrian forces on the battlefield. Mousesack, the royal sorcerer and Ciri's friend, helps her escape. By the time Geralt breaks free from the dungeon, she's already gone. On the run, Ciri has a bit of a journey. First, she meets a young elf boy named Dara in the woods, who leads her to a refugee camp full of people who have been displaced by Nilfgaard's war. Then she ends up in Brokilon Forest and learns the truth about her family's violent past from the dryads. After that, she deals with a doppelganger that appears as Mousesack, who is slain after he helped get her out of Sintra. She escapes and parts ways with Dara. It's after this that Yennefer joins forces with the sorcerers who don't wish for Nilfgaard to conquer the entire dang continent. At the Battle of Sodden Hill, things take a turn for the worse, with many of the sorcerers being slain after their magic runs dry. But it's fine. Yennefer digs deep and torches the remaining Nilfgaard forces with chaos magic. Elsewhere, Geralt happens upon a man in the woods who needs a bit of help dealing with some zombies. Geralt, of course, obliges, but ends up getting bit in the process. It's not enough to kill him, but he spends some time in the back of the man's cart having hallucinations of his troubled childhood. Meanwhile, Ciri is temporarily taken in by a kind woman before she decides to run off into the woods. This is when Geralt arrives in the back of the car and we realize that the man he saved is the husband of the woman who took Ciri in. He runs into the woods and they find each other, embracing at last and fulfilling their collective destiny. The first thing they do after finding each other is hit up the aftermath of the Battle of Sodden Hill. There, he's told by Tissaia that Yennefer is dead.
We won because of her. She bought us time until the armies arrived.
Obviously, he's devastated. Little does he know, though, she's actually been captured by Nilfgaardian forces. He and Ciri then decide to travel to Kaer Morhen. On the way, Geralt tries to help an old friend, Nivellen, by lifting a curse. He succeeds, but also ends up killing Nivellen's one true love in the process. At Kaer Morhen, a witcher transforms into a giant tree monster and he's forced to slay it. This makes him realize that Ciri will need to learn how to defend herself if she hopes to survive once he inevitably passes away someday. As such, he begins to train her. Yennefer, meanwhile, is captured by elves alongside her old classmate, Fringilla. At this point, she's lost her ability to use magic. They're brought to the leader of the elves, Francesca. Yennefer tries to convince her that she's a quarter elf, but doesn't really look the part, so it doesn't work. Francesca uses them to find a mysterious hut in the woods. Inside, they're met with various visions. Francesca sees an elf goddess, while Fringilla sees the god emperor of Nilfgaard, the White Flame. Yennefer, however, sees the truth. They're actually being duped by a demon witch known as the Deathless Mother. Though the Deathless Mother tempts Yennefer by offering to give her her powers back, Yennefer refuses. Francesca and Fringilla aren't so wise, though. They both accept her offer. After they reach Sintra, the elves are taken in as refugees in exchange for joining up with the Nilfgaardian army. Francesca becomes pregnant with the first elven child to be born in 1,000 years, and Fringilla quickly rises higher in the Nilfgaardian hierarchy. Yennefer then travels back to Aretuza, where she's grilled for using chaos magic. Stregobor even thinks she's a spy. To prove her loyalty, she's ordered to execute Cahir, a knight who had very briefly captured Ciri before she managed to escape Sintra during the siege. Instead, she spares his life and they both escape. Once they make it out, they attempt to seek passage to Sintra from someone named the Sandpiper, who turns out to be Jaskier. Things look like they're going to work out until Jaskier is captured by Rience, a fire mage who's been tasked by a sorceress named Lydia to find Ciri.
Fire is a forbidden source because it usually consumes those that draw from it. Unless you're very talented.
Yennefer finds a way to help him escape, but is soon after captured by guards. She's then portaled to the Deathless Mother's hut once more, where she's again tempted with the prospect of regaining her powers. This time, she accepts the Demon Witch's offer. In return, she must find Ciri and bring her back to the hut. Elsewhere, Geralt faces a weird centipede monster and comes to realize that it has something to do with the monolith that Ciri destroyed after escaping Sintra. This leads him to hit up Istred, Yennefer's old lover, and find out about the conjunction of spheres. Istred has a theory, though, which is that the conjunction never actually happened and that the monoliths connect the different worlds. Whatever the case, Ciri is the key. Geralt decides to bring in Triss Merigold to help him figure out what's going on with the monsters and Ciri's visions. Turns out Ciri has elder blood, which can be used to make the elixir that transforms regular humans into witchers. Ciri wants to follow in Geralt's footsteps, but he isn't into the idea. When Triss puts Ciri into a deep sleep trance, we find out that Ciri's parents ran away to avoid fulfilling a prophecy, which is that a child with elder blood will basically bring about the apocalypse. Because of this, Geralt brings Ciri to a temple so that she can learn to control her burgeoning magical abilities. To his surprise, Yennefer arrives. He doesn't know that she's in pursuit of Ciri as well. They reconnect and it's sweet, but then Rience shows up and Yennefer escapes through a portal with Ciri. After reuniting with Jaskier and apologizing, Geralt and he set out after Yennefer. During their journey, Yennefer and Ciri bond, which ultimately results in Yennefer changing her mind about delivering her to the Deathless Mother by the time Geralt catches up to her, rightfully pissed. When they portal to the hut where the Demon Witch is, they find that she's escaped. No bueno. This is when things get real. In Sintra, Tissaia and Vilgefortz, a powerful mage, become the new council leaders of the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, which definitely upsets the establishment. Also, Francesca's baby is assassinated, which leads her to assume humans are responsible. She turns that assumption into action and takes revenge on every newborn in town. But that's not all. The Deathless Mother, drunk on the delicious despair of this depraved act, possesses Ciri and opens a portal through which monsters start to spill through. After Yennefer sacrifices herself to save Ciri and lets the Deathless Mother possess her, Ciri portals them all to another world, which is where we find out that the Deathless Mother is a member of the Wild Hunt. Turns out, Ciri is too.
Child of the elder blood, starry-eyed daughter of chaos, join our hunt.
After they warp back to the continent, Yennefer somehow regains her powers, and the three of them become a happy little found family. This is also when Emhyr, aka the White Flame, arrives. Yep, that's Duny, Ciri's father. Fringilla and Cahir claim to be behind the killing of the elf child, which they hope will bring them favor in Emhyr's eyes. But this doesn't go as planned, since he's actually the one who arranged for the baby to be killed. As such, they're taken away after being exposed as liars. Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri go on the run and enjoy being a family for a while, until both Rience and the elves show up looking for them. Thankfully, they're able to escape. Meanwhile, an ambitious elf named Gallatin wants Emhyr to relieve Francesca of command and put him in charge of the elves. Emhyr doesn't like him though, so he asks Cahir to kill him as a way of proving his loyalty. Cahir reluctantly obliges. In the northern kingdom of Redania, spy master Dijkstra and his cohort Philippa hatch a plan to gain better control of the ineffectual King Vizimir, who doesn't care much about the ongoing war. They do this by having the queen killed and her head sent to Vizimir in a box, all while claiming that Nilfgaard is responsible. That'll do it. And since the North wants Ciri just the same as Emhyr, except for political reasons instead of anything prophecy-related, Philippa tries to force Jaskier into telling her where she is. Jaskier doesn't respond well to her, but he does respond well to Vizimir's brother, Radovid, who is a fan of his music.
Redania may not be perfect, but it's at least bad option. You could be a royal bard.
The two eventually hook up. After finding out that Rience has been doing weird experiments on young women, Geralt saves one of them, who strangely thinks she's Ciri. Knowing that Rience isn't powerful enough for a complex spell like this, he assumes someone more powerful is behind it. As such, he and Yennefer organize a ball with the intent of flushing them out. Ultimately, Vilgefortz is exposed as the villain, which upsets Tissaia, who's been his girlfriend up to this point. They end things with each other and a coup ensues, with elves showing up to throw down on Vilgefortz's behalf. Thankfully, Stregobor hates elves and is able to thwart them. As this is happening, Geralt and Yennefer kill Rience. Ciri, meanwhile, fights Cahir, who ultimately gives up and pledges himself to her. She doesn't know what to say about it, so she just lets him go. Then comes a showdown between Geralt and Vilgefortz. Geralt puts up a good fight, but Vilgefortz is too powerful. He leaves the Witcher severely wounded and heads off to face off against Ciri in a giant monolith.
I shall see you later. One day, perhaps.
In the monolith, Vilgefortz tells Ciri that she doesn't know how to control her power, and that together they could rule the continent. But she just blows the whole thing up instead. She's then portaled to the middle of the desert where she hallucinates her mother, her grandmother, and her ancient ancestor, Falca. Turns out, Falca wants Ciri to bring about the apocalypse and start the world over anew. After her vision subsides, Ciri is captured by a group of bounty hunters. In the aftermath of the coup, Tissaia kills herself. Yennefer then gathers what's left of the Brotherhood, which is actually just a small number of sorcerers she went to magic school with, and redubs it as a sisterhood. Fringilla, after being held captive, returns to the mix and tells Francesca that Emhyr is actually the one who is behind the death of her newborn child. Francesca, unsurprisingly, is filled with rage.
He does not know the meaning of suffering. But he will.
In Redania, Dijkstra is in trouble with Vizimir since he was involved with Vilgefortz's coup and it didn't quite go according to plan. But it's fine, Philippa has Vizimir assassinated and they crown his brother Radovid as the new king in hopes of him being a lot more pliable. Meanwhile, Geralt recovers in the woods with the help of a snarky archer named Milva and eventually sets out for Nilfgaard alongside her and Jaskier, where he thinks he'll find Ciri. But as we come to find out, it's the imposter Ciri that Vilgefortz brings to Emhyr. And somehow he thinks she's the real deal, even though you'd think he'd know his own daughter when he sees her. The real Ciri ends up being rescued by a ragtag group called the Rats, who take her in after she proves herself by killing one of the bounty hunters who kidnapped her. When they ask what her name is, she says,
Call me Falca.
As Geralt and the gang travel along towards Nilfgaard, they come upon Cahir, who is trapped in a coffin.
I will kill anyone who gets in my way until I get to your Emperor and kill him.
Geralt, please.
Against his impulse to just kill him, Geralt lets him go. Not long after, they come across Zoltan and Percival, two stout dwarves who become their traveling companions. Along the road, they bond and have a good time, but Geralt is haunted by dreams of Ciri and Yennefer. Yennefer, meanwhile, has the whole Vilgefortz problem to deal with. The sisterhood she's gathered thus far isn't enough to guarantee a victory against him, so she sets out to recruit some familiar faces: Fringilla, Philippa, Francesca, and Istred. Fringilla is sent to side with Vilgefortz and act as a spy, while the others and a bunch of other sorcerers prepare for the eventual showdown. Vesemir and some other witchers show up to contribute and properly fortify their defenses as well. Fringilla is eventually found out and imprisoned, as is Istred. While all this is going down, Ciri has taken up with the rats. At first, she wants to go north, but she eventually becomes entranced by their lifestyle. After she hooks up with Missile, she decides to stay with them and become a rat herself. There's a little bit of an initiation process, of course, but she proves herself to be worthy on more than one occasion as they roam about the continent. As for the imposter Ciri, she's subjected to Emir's cruelty when he forces her to decide a soldier's fate after he's left alive by Geralt. We also see that Emir tasks his crony Stefan Skellen, better known as Tawny Owl, with finding the real Ciri after he finds out the truth. He does by employing a ruthless bounty hunter named Leo, who loves to kill witchers just for the fun of it. All the while, Geralt's treacherous journey towards Nilfgaard continues and the group gathers more companions. They meet Regis, a solitary healer who we later learn is a vampire who no longer indulges his bloodthirsty instincts. A pretty decent guy overall, and he makes some good booze.
Wow.
That is the best 7th essence I've ever tried.
They also come upon Yarpin at a refugee camp, another feisty dwarf that both Geralt and Jaskier know from the past. Things don't go according to plan at the refugee camp, though. There's a whole witch-burning thing that results in one of their traveling companions getting killed, and the camp is also raided by Northerners. While Geralt is interrogated by Dijkstra, Jaskier tries to make amends with Radovid, who hasn't been having the easiest time being king. This doesn't end well, and Jaskier gets tied up alongside Geralt. But it's all good, Regis saves them and they're on their way. Soon after, Radovid rids Dijkstra of his post and sends him off to do whatever Dijkstra does when he isn't scheming. Cahir, who's been following Geralt since he was freed from the coffin, eventually joins up with them and attempts to convince Geralt that he too is tied to Ciri by destiny, which Geralt isn't too quick to believe. Elsewhere, Yennefer and her small army face off against Vilgefortz, who harnesses the power of sacrificial mages and attacks them at their headquarters via portals, all of which is made possible by using Istred's research. It's a bloody battle, with many losses on both sides. While Vesemir dies fighting Vilgefortz, the most devastating of them for Yennefer is Istred, who sacrifices himself to ensure their victory. Vilgefortz escapes, but all of his cohorts are defeated. They burn Istred's book of research so that no one will ever be able to use it for nefarious purposes ever again. Ciri, meanwhile, admits to Missile who she really is and tells her about Geralt and Yennefer.
If they're still alive, they're better off without me.
And later, after hearing about how Emir plans to marry his own daughter, which would be impossible since she isn't there, she realizes that something is awry and takes off. But when she learns that Leo is after her and that he'll kill anyone she associates with, she returns to find that he's slain every last one of her rat companions. She puts up a good fight, but Leo defeats her as well and takes her captive. After traveling through a dangerous swamp and dealing with a pesky pair of spirits, Geralt and Yennefer reunite, which of course involves a softcore sex scene and the obligatory bath. This is when he finds out that Ciri isn't in Nilfgaard, since Yennefer previously portaled there and found the imposter Ciri waiting for her instead of the real one. We also find out that Milva is pregnant. She leaves for a time but returns to save the gang as they're traveling down the river. This comes at a cost, resulting in a miscarriage. Geralt and the gang's journey culminates in an epic bridge battle, which also includes an awesome monster fight. Cahir finally proves his worthiness to Geralt and the two become battle bros. Just look at these two. After it's all over, Geralt is knighted by Queen Meve for his deeds and reacts just the way you'd expect him to when he's told that his allegiance is now to her and her alone. Elsewhere, Yennefer and the surviving sorcerers decide to build a lodge that will serve as a place to educate those with magical abilities. Back in Nilfgaard, Emir is pretty pissed about Yennefer showing up and finding out that the Ciri in his palace is an imposter, since she can now spread the word that his impending marriage is bogus. But it's sort of fine. The imposter Ciri pledges her loyalty to him and agrees to continue acting the part. It also turns out that Emir has some sort of monster that will help him achieve his goals in the near future. So, with all of that being said, the table is set for Season 5, which will be the final chapter of the show. Be sure to check back in with us when it drops so we can discuss Geralt and the gang's story one last time.